Well, welcome everybody. There you go, the invisible cup Stormy
My invisible
has.
cup. I've had my 2 cups for the day.
I save a little bit. I get a doppio. They call me the doppio dude downstairs, but I get a doppio, 2 shots of espresso, and then just a little splash of coffee in that. But I end up using this for quite a bit of the day, you
Yeah.
know. So so welcome everybody. My name's Daniel Allison, the average dude. I've been in business development for over 30 years. And I've been talking to a lot of facility managers through the years. And that's what this show is all about, facility management focus. And my co-host, Stormy Friday, you know one or two things about facilities, don't you?
Just a little bit. Yes. Just a little bit over the years, I think. Uh-huh.
What we have going on here today, if you've joined us, thank you for joining us. Stormy and I have been speaking with a variety of facility managers over the last several weeks. We've got all sorts of facility managers that are now in the network and that will be coming on this show and will be talking to us, including two brand new facility managers joining us today that you will meet, and we're going to get to talk to them. As they get on and find us here, I want to talk to Stormy, and we're gonna talk some facilities with her. I haven't really had a chance to talk too much with you, but for folks that haven't met you before, tell us the story of how you got involved into facilities back in the day.
Back in the day, as I say to everybody, 100 years ago, I was a I was a management consultant, and I was doing some work for a colleague who had just left to be a deputy administrator at the Environmental Protection Agency in the Reagan administration. And he called me, asked me if I would come over and reorganize the human resources department. And so I did that, and I was made enough noise, I guess, and enough of a splash that the administrator called me into her office in Gorsuch, Burford, and her son is now a Supreme Court Justice, Neil
Mm.
Gorsuch. I met him when he was tiny, tiny.
Oh
Uh,
wow, that's interesting.
yep, he's a dynamic young fella. And anyway, she said to me, I understand you think you're a hotshot management consultant, and I have an organization that does a little light dusting, and they need some help. It's called the Facilities and Real Estate Organization, and would you be interested in going down and fixing it? I knew nothing about facilities management, nor did most other people. It was a relatively new business, a new profession. And I said, sure, how hard can it be? And so I said I would do it. So I inherited an organization of probably 150 plus people. I had another 500 plus contractors. I had 4 to 6 million square feet of real estate around the country. We had some boats and planes and trains in Europe we didn't know we had. It
Oh
was
my
an interesting organization. The first day, this was my introduction to facilities management. The first day I got in early, I was getting into my office and I heard gunshots. And somebody yelled, get under your desk. I got under my desk, and when the smoke cleared, somebody came in and said 2 facility guards had a shootout in front of the office, and one killed the other security guard over a relationship with a woman.
oh my gosh.
And by the way, those people work for you. That was
Oh my goodness.
my
Trial by
first,
fire.
my first day. Um, and then I have other wonderful stories. I could write a fabulous cocktail table book about it. But as people used to tell me a long time ago, if I did that, I would never work in this town again in the Washington, D.C. area.
Yeah,
Never wrote it. But
yeah.
that was my introduction. And back then, I had a huge empire. We ran the print business. We had all the cleaning. We ran information technology. That was back when IT was part of FM. I mean, we had a big empire
Woo.
and a bad reputation.
and a bad reputation. So you came in, and I'm just thinking about the one presentation of yours that I've listened to a couple of times, the first 100 days.
Yes.
And so your first 100 days at a new facility, you didn't know anyone there. You didn't know that the security guards had a love triangle going on. But tell me about trying to wrap your head around. You were a management consultant, as you said. They kind of eyed you for this position. You came in, you saw all that they had going on. How do you get your head wrapped around all of that that's happening?
Well, the very first thing that I said was I have to have an all hands meeting, and I want to explain who I am and what I'm doing. And
Mm.
these 3 sheets of paper I have kept with me since that day that I went to EPA.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and those 3 sheets of paper say, this is what I wanted to say in my introduction. I
Yes.
wanted them to know who I was. What did I do? How, did I get to know facilities? What have I done since? What was my career like? And then why am I there? I was there because I wanted to be there. And then what was my management philosophy? My management philosophy was open and participatory. I wanted to get to know my people. And so I really preached and we practiced walking about, and that was important. That was a management style. Fair in dealing with people, making decisions and taking risks, making responsible parties accountable, and how I was going to do that. Where are we going? What were my goals? How are we going to improve service delivery? Because that was one of the things we were faulted on. And then how are we going to rise above that and provide first-class service to our internal clients? And how are we going to define success? What will be performance standards? What will be my expectations? I have pages on all of that.
Oh, wow.
So
So,
that was my first day introduction to my probably 300 and some people showed up for that meeting. Yeah.
wow. Well, I love that because you wanted to ring a few bells there to kind of tell them who you were, tell them what your goals were and how things would be going. So I think you did a lot of what you talked about in that with the entire group, not on an individual basis, but let's give a big umbrella kind of big picture. Where are we headed? This is who I am. Why do you think that was important for you to do?
Well, I think it's always important for somebody new coming into an organization. I had not been part of the organization. I came from the outside. The rumor mill is always wonderful. The rumor mill is she's here to get rid of us all.
Yes.
She's a political hack. So she's here to do whatever, the president wants her to do, or the head of EPA.
Yeah.
And she probably doesn't understand our business. And so they needed to know who I was, what I had done, why I was there, what our burning imperatives are. You've heard me talk about that before, how the organization would be evaluated in terms of success, and also how, in fact, I would relate to all of the people in the organization. And so from there, I had individual meetings with all my staff within the first 2 weeks that I was there. And then I had group meetings with teams and with, section leaders and with branch chiefs, because it was important to see. I've also always talked about assessing your skills. I needed to see what I had in terms of talent,
Yes.
and where we had skills gaps. And then I needed to see who I could count on initially.
Yes, I'm making some notes here. So
Yeah.
you're assessing your team, and it makes me think of a coach. You come in,
Pretty much.
you've got to it's an outside coach, and maybe he came from a different league or something like that. And so you've got to get the respect of your team and the team huddle. Then I'm going to start evaluating players to, as you said, how are we going to win games? This is my goal, is to win games. But now, what are the players that I'm playing with?
Yeah.
And how are we going to achieve that? I'm going to go ahead and bring Glenn Fitzgerald in here too. Glenn, good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Doing good. Now it's been many years since I've seen you in person, but I got a chance to catch up with you on the phone yesterday, and I'm so glad that I called you, Glenn.
Yeah, I was glad you called me too. Sorry I was late and finishing up another meeting this morning. So
Absolutely. Well, I was just getting to know Stormy here, Stormy Friday, and I know from our conversation yesterday, you may have been in the room with Stormy before.
I definitely have been up at NFM&T convention there. Yep. I've been in several of your classes over the years. Didn't go this year, but
me either. First time I spoke at almost every NFMT conference. This is their 25th anniversary, and next year they're going to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hey, that's a lot closer to me, so that'll be an easier one.
They're leaving Baltimore, but I've spoken at all of the conferences, I think, except 2 or 3 maybe, and I didn't go this year either.
Well, it's good to see you in person, and I appreciate all the sessions you've done over the years up there. I think I've been like 12 times. So not as many as you, but I've been there several times over the years. So great conference.
Well, Glenn, that's interesting. Let's kind of, and we'll kind of circle back with what Stormy and I were talking about. But when you think about going to conferences and that sort of thing, why is it important for the continuing education in your role? And we'll talk more about that.
Our what we have here, we're a church with a private school, day school, K-5 through 12. And that can occupy so much of your time. There's always an emergency. There's always someone who needs something. There's always a room that needs change for a different setup, and all those things that come up. And if you don't dedicate time every week or every year for these kind of things, it's so easy to get behind, and so easy to find yourself playing catch up and all of those things. And even at those conventions, I've developed a couple of really close friendships from conventions there, and just having those people you can reach out to and run an idea past, to understand the ins and outs of the thankless job of being facilities manager sometimes. So very
that's one of the things that we've noticed just on our program. And of course, we're adding more and more facility managers, and we'll have some that end up joining us today. But it's that kind of commonality of, hey, we're doing the same thing. We're doing it at different facilities, but we're doing the same things, and we can learn from each other and kind of how each other are handling these challenges.
Exactly.
So, I want to go back. I think it's just such an interesting story, and it kind of tells us what makes, a lot of folks with facility management, the big turnover. A lot of new facility managers are needed. And so I start thinking about, what is it from a personality standpoint that makes a good facility manager? And Glenn, I'm going to let you have that one. What do you think are the traits? Now you are a facility manager, and you're not going to call yourself a bad one, I'm sure. But what do you think makes a good facility manager?
I think one of the biggest things I have found to help me is putting the right team together, having the right people in. There are a lot of guys that find themselves in a situation where it's just the one guy or maybe 2 guy shows. With the people I'm familiar with in operations about our size, and they're outsourcing everything. We're a little unique in that we do a lot of in-house things, and having the right team in place is critical. And just not having the people, but once you have that team, to foster the team thinking, the team mentality, we're in this together. We're all important. And keeping the trust level high within the team, I think, is one of the most critically important things. And, that's something you can do on big scale, for trust building, but at the same time, it's the day in, day out consistency of trusting your people, helping them grow, stretching them when needed, but at the same time, making sure that they always have that open line of communication with you. You can't have a good team without that. It's got to be a team effort for sure. And then, even beyond the team, work, with the other departments and people that we work with to foster that team. We're in this together. We want your event, your classroom, whatever the case may be, to be the most successful with the resources that we have. And building that team thinking, across the board throughout the rest of the organization.
Now, talk a little bit about, you said you guys do a lot in-house. Y'all have some teams like janitorial, or talk about some of the things you do in-house and managing some of the teams
Sure.
that you have specifically there.
Sure. So on the janitorial custodial, I kind of have a hybrid. We have an outsourced company that does a couple of our buildings. And then I have some part-time folks that also clean in the evening who are hourly type employees. I have one full-time staff member who has a lot of custodial duties, but he also serves like a day porter, I think is a good way to describe what him. He handles the spills and the cleanup in the bathrooms when a child is sick, those kind of things. So that has worked pretty well for us. I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, the best day you ever have is the day you hire an outsourced contractor. The best day you have is when you decide to get rid of them. And so I'm kind of landed in the middle. I like that too. On the professional side of things, one of my men is a highly skilled electrician, very well trained, certifications, all that. He's since gone on to do some HVAC training and has really, really got a hold of those. So we do a lot of that. General service in-house. A bigger repair we outsource. Swap out for a rooftop unit or whatever, we would outsource with his big, heavy involvement on that. One of my men comes from the appliance repair background, both residential and commercial, and with the school. Those skills have been, really, really valuable to us. Instead of, spending $140, $150 an hour on some of those things, we're able to do a lot of that just in the normal course of our day. And then kind of my almost assistant, although that's not his official title, he handles a lot of the record keeping track of all those things that are done, getting them entered into our CMMS program so that we can go back when I need to make an argument for a new piece of equipment, say, hey, yeah, we've worked on this thing this many times, we've spent this much money in labor and parts, and yes, it's time to spend the $40,000, $50,000 to replace that rooftop unit. All those things are valuable as I have to make, justification for expenses to the, higher ups.
To kind of talk about budgets here, but you brought up a couple of things that came up there.
Sure.
When you talk about CMMS, I just interviewed someone that I call him vendor agnostic. So he's not working for any CMMS, but he knows a lot about them. And I love talking to folks like that because you always get the truth that way.
Right.
And so I wanted to ask you what makes a good CMMS in your experience, and do people use it and that sort of thing?
The biggest thing is to make it user friendly. Both from the person requesting something, if it's really, really easy for them to do, it's easy to say, hey, yeah, we're happy to look at that, see what we can do about it. Go ahead and put in a work order. Working closely with our IT man here, he developed just a simple web page that people can, put information in, and it automatically just sends it over. Almost like a Google form that everyone's familiar with. Makes it really simple for them. And then on the back end, as the technicians work on things, complete things, and then start entering all the costs, a system that's easy for them to use, that they don't have a lot of hoops to jump through. It's very critical too. It's got to be user friendly. Most of them can kick out some, amazing reports and details and all those kind of things. But, to get that information there and keep it there is important. If you don't have that information, your data is worthless.
Stormy, talk about CMMS and your experience. I haven't talked to you since I spoke with Greg, but talk to me about the different issues when it comes to those.
Well, we've been through a number of different cycles with CMMS, and probably 15 years ago, people would buy an awful lot of off-the-shelf CMMS systems because marketing people were good at selling them. And so a lot of money was spent on very expensive CMMS systems. And we would go into FM organizations and there would be boxes of software stacked up around the corner. And we'd say, what's that? And they'd say, that's our CMMS. We've never installed it because it's too complicated. And then facility organizations got smart and they realized they had to have a CMMS that was tailored to their organization. And just as Glenn said, there are a couple of different components. One, it has to be user-friendly on the customer end. You can't have a system that people can't access, that can't be on your website, or that you can't pick up the call center phone and get to somebody who's going to take down your information. And then you have to have feedback. And two, it has to be user-friendly for the technicians that are using it, or else they won't use it. And so they have to be able to use it to input the data. They have to be able to get data out of it that makes sense to them and that they can use, or else it's a useless piece of software. And that happens so frequently. And then software companies got smarter and they came out with CMMS systems that could be tailored, and you could buy bits and pieces of it and put it together. And they streamlined them so that we didn't have these enormous systems that were so complicated. Organizations, big companies, schools, hospitals, manufacturing companies didn't want to use them. And so that's the key. And then you have to train your folks on how to use them so they're not afraid of them, because there are so many facility folks that have come up through the ranks when we didn't have these things, and they're intimidated still by a lot of that technology, particularly the ones that are now using AI to do some posturing and all those things. And so you have to keep people up to speed and train them on how to use them.
You said something and took me a different direction, Glenn. The AI and the tech, and of course y'all got sound systems and you got all sorts of things there. How do you see incorporating some of that technology? How much is too much? How do you ride that line without going in too deep, too fast?
I am just now beginning to get into that world. We were with a CMMS, and it was working really, really well for us. And in some ways, I wish we are still with them. We discovered a system specifically tailored for a church, which is kind of combines a church calendar and a CMMS system into kind of one umbrella. There's some pretty, great things that work back and forth between the two that are really, really helpful for us. And the data that we have in there now is just getting to the point where we can, I can extract it and then start looking at, trends and those kind of things. And just beginning to get to that point where I can use it. We're a couple years in now, had some hiccups in implementation, nothing, just your typical things you have to overcome. But we're just now getting, enough data there to really, really, really start being valuable to us. So.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. One of the things that we talked about with technology, a technician doesn't become great because you give him great technology.
Right.
He has to have that desire and whatever it is, a technician of any kind. And I'm thinking about some of the HVAC technicians. We had all sorts of bells and whistles and technology. You can take pictures and do digital this. the guys that were really, really good and did great work already, they used it.
Yeah.
You know, and the others, they didn't use it as much. So I think it's a human, those CMMS, just kind of looking at it as an outsider, it seems very familiar to a lot of human behavioral type
Yeah.
things. We got to get everybody on board so we get good information.
Right. Exactly. And even those who might be a little reluctant to, utilize some of the tools there that they have at their, pictures and records. When you can start demonstrating, hey, how valuable this is. Hey, remember we worked on this unit last year or this thing. What were our troubles? You can, pull it up and look at it. It's like, oh yeah, we're not doing that again. So, if
Yeah.
and that reluctancy, I think that's also part of the team mentality, is to help people understand how these things interrelate and how they help out, and even going back to making a justification in the budget, for a new thing.
Yes.
They begin to see like, oh yeah, it really does help when we have all these records on these things. So
I think too, you brought up a really good point that often facility organizations will purchase their CMMS system without doing their needs assessment. And you have to ask the people who are going to be using the tool what their needs are. As you just said, we need something to be able to do prediction. We need something to be able to tell us when we have problems. And if you don't ask the people who are actually using the tool what their requirements are and what their needs are, you get systems that are prefab and then they get force fit into an organization instead of doing the needs assessment first and then finding a system that can be tailored to that need. So that's really critical.
I couldn't agree more. That is such a great point.
Yeah.
I want to talk. You mentioned it, and you kind of went where I was going to, Glenn, with the budget and different types of budget depending on the type of facility that we're managing.
Right.
And so, I've worked with developers, and they're the guys writing me a check. They are the budget. That's what they've got to answer to. They know their budget. Then I work with manufacturers. He's going to have to talk to the plant manager, and they're going to have to send it to corporate maybe. In your situation, in a church, you guys have a unique budgeting situation. And
Yeah.
I would think that the more information, the more simple that we can make these capital projects and the why behind these things, telling a good story becomes important, doesn't it?
It really, really, really does. I developed my own budget, based on history and based on needs that come up. Keeping my ear open for, those sticking points, those sore spots for people as they interact with buildings and areas and, different, resources, to know what the problems are. You've got to be attuned to that. And then you have to keep that all in context of other needs of other departments here, at the church. We've got about 150,000 square feet. So, it's a pretty good sized complex. I mean, for a church. So keeping your ear open to what the needs are, and then being able to help those people be able to enter the request easily is important. When I first stepped into the role, one of the first sore points I had was one particular building with ongoing horrible HVAC problems. And then when we got there, the teachers in particular were saying, well, I hate bothering you and giving you just another work order to do. And it was like, oh, no, you need to understand that all these work orders establish a trend in this building. So I can look how many work orders we've had here. Look how many too hot, too cold calls we've had, on this building and in this classroom. It was really, really valuable when I made the argument that, okay, it's now time to spend $250,000 here to fix this problem. Having all that information there was very, very helpful. And I think particularly the teachers in that building that live through all of that are some of the, like, yeah, put it in, enter that work order. They do it all the time. And, it helped everyone else to be encouraged to, don't just text me, go ahead and put it in. It really is helpful. So
That brings me to an interesting thing, Stormy. When it comes to repair versus replace, and we're talking to anyone about kind of making our case. Why is that sort of thing important? And I know you talk about the peacocking sometimes in that scenario as well.
Yeah, and I think you've heard me say before that it's important to syndicate the risk on these things. How much is it going to cost us if we continue to repair something over the next 5, 10, 15 years versus how do we amortize the cost of replacing it over that same life cycle? What's the life cycle of your equipment? And you need to be able to explain that and then have senior management. Now, do you have a buildings and grounds committee? How's your structure?
I do have a buildings and ground committee. I do have a direct contact in our leadership team. So I have someone I answer to. The buildings and grounds help a lot on the practical side of things. And, as things come up, projects need to come up. Several of the members are very, very highly qualified in their fields, and having someone say, yes, this is really something. Again, it just goes to make, another point to make my argument for a big repair, a big whatever, make that argument strongly. And it's not just me saying it, this individual who's well respected is saying the same thing. And the other people involved on the board here, they all agree that this is something we need to do. So yes.
That's your advocacy chain.
Sure.
So you aren't a voice in the wilderness saying, I need this, we need this. You've got multiple people now who build the case for you, who are well respected, and they are your advocates. And
exactly.
They help you sell your case. Yeah, market your case. Yep.
When you're talking to facilities and they're right on that line of do we have folks on staff and outsource part, kind of the hybrid like Glenn's talking about, how do you help folks decide, okay, let's bring this in-house? I'm sure you've heard lots and lots of stories and different outcomes of that through the years. What are some of the things that come to mind?
Well, I think it's a question of the investment in the facility. And it takes a lot of work to get your partners to feel as invested in a facility as your in-house people do. And that's always been the argument. There were, I guess it was in the 80s when we went wild and outsourced everything. I mean, we gave the keys of our buildings away to anybody who walked in and said, I can do it better, faster, cheaper. And it wasn't the case. And part of the reason was they had no clue about the culture. They had no clue about what the performance targets were, and they weren't invested in the company or the organization, the church or the school, whatever it was. And so we gradually began to bring things back in-house. And that hybrid relationship works best. But you have to get your partners, your service partners, to feel that same level of commitment. And clearly they're there to make money, but they also need to feel like what they provide as a service is valued. And so you have to be able to make sure you educate your internal customers about the role of those service partners and how they are helping you and how they are also invested in the success of the people there. And that's part of what the developmental relationship has to be. You don't just hire somebody, they show up, and all of a sudden they really believe in the same things your own people do. So that's critical.
Agreed. And in some ways, fostering that team attitude between,
Absolutely.
between our organization here and those suppliers is critical.
Yep.
And there again, you have to maintain them, and when problems and challenges arise, work through it together. And what I found is several of my key people I reach out to routinely, we found ourselves in an emergency situation, something that went like no one could expect it, and how they react in those situations are critically important. Just a quick story: we had a roofing project going on part of our building. I think it was at the time about $150,000 for that section of roof, re-roof, and a good contractor. We'd worked with them before. As is typical in South Carolina, we had an afternoon thunder shower pop up that came in a different direction than what normally happens and caught the crew and everyone off guard. Ended up with about a $300,000 insurance claim for his insurance, the contractors. But I recommend that company wholeheartedly every chance I get, because up to that point, they were doing what they needed to do. And when they got caught and all that damage happened, from the moment I made that, first rain made it into the building to the time that it was remedied and we were back to normal, they did everything right. They did everything they could. They made themselves available, spoke on our behalf with their insurance company, with the contractor insurance company hired. Having a company that will do that for you when it's down, you've got to have that team effort there, and they've got to feel they're valued, and they've got to know that they're going to be your first point of contact for things you need. And then keeping those lines of communication open. The company that we use since grown, but I know I can pick up the phone and call the owner, and he's always happy to talk with me. Sometimes it's just shoot the breeze or give him a hard time about something, but
it's part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing that we all have to deal with from time to time. I'm sure you have stories too, Stormy.
Oh yeah.
So.
We lost you there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
There we go. That's better. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have to sit up kind of close to this.
Yep.
So sometimes that if we lose the microphone, but we have talked about that before, Glenn, how really you find out who your vendors are, who your great vendors are when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really when you really, really need them. I mean, we talk about that a lot from the folks that I talk to on the vendor side. Differentiating is not an easy thing to do. Everybody should be doing the same things. And so in your experience talking to people, just you've already kind of hit on some of those things, but does anything come to mind, you or Stormy, on things that make a good vendor? It's like, hey, I'm looking for this, and please don't do that. Anything like that, that you look for after years of doing projects and talking to vendors? Anything come to mind?
Couple of things come to mind right away. Being responsive to the needs that I have and the specifics. Anytime you talk about a school, there are some very specific things that apply to schools, and that's probably our biggest operation here at the church is a school. So everything's got to fit into that context. And then communication. Am I having to track you down to find out what's going on, or are you ahead of the game letting me know what's going on? And how can we, keep those communication lines open? Doing their part of the contract, whatever that is, fulfilling that. And then if something goes wrong, how responsive are they to get that done, get it remedied, get it taken care of? So.
Anything else, Stormy?
Well, just to kind of piggyback on some of that, I think, yes, the fit and the match between the people that are actually going to be working with you and your organization. We've talked about this before. You need to see the people who are actually physically going to be working with you, not the A-team marketing team that comes in to sell a project. The fact that you need to know what their customer service policies, procedures, goals, and objectives are, and what their customer orientation is. Does that match with the culture of your school, your church? Is that the same? The fact, and you made a very critical point, Glenn, that you can pick up the phone at any time and call a senior level person, the owner of the company or someone there who responds to you, I think, favorably. And then what are their long-term goals and objectives? Most vendors who want to become partners, they don't want to be there for 6 months or a year. They want a long-term relationship. And so if that is a goal, then how do you build that relationship? What's in it for them long-term? What's in it for you long-term? And you need to establish those things right up front when you select somebody to come in and work with you in your organization.
Sure, I agreed. And
I want to mention just briefly, Glenn, go ahead. Did you have
no,
that thought?
I was still formulating that thought. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
no, oh no, I know all about that, but I wanted to say something that came to my mind. I do think that it's important. I've been part of organizations where, they want kind of the business development rep to handle as much as they can. But the truth is, you need somebody that can really has got some push and pull, that doesn't have commission breath to the boss man to really find out, because you never know what that dynamic is within an organization between those folks that you're talking to and the owner of the company, or whatever the leadership structure is. So you won't, because that's a real relationship. And when we need these folks in a pinch, or whatever it is that comes up, a big insurance claim, I want to know the owner, not the sales rep.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So,
and even there's things that come up on my side that, we've got this problem, I need to get it handled quickly. But if I'm doing a project in the summer with one of my bigger contractors, working with their schedule to say, hey, I just need to get it done in these months. What, where can you fit us in? I know you've got some other big projects going on, and then, kind of allowing them to drive the timing as much as possible when I have that ability. That too helps to foster the team effort. And for them to know that they can pick up the phone and say, hey, we had this go bad. We're not going to be there for a couple of days. And I'm going to say, okay, all right, just keep me posted. And, when I can do that, I do that. And, there's sometimes you just can't. So, no, we're stuck. We've got the hard school start coming up. And they understand that. So, those open lines back and forth between both.
You made an excellent point there. And it's something that it just hit me. Absolutely. If we have a project that we're not sure, let's just say it's a package unit that we need to have replaced. It's not a 911 thing. We have a little bit of a window. If you have a contractor, they've got a workflow that ebbs and flows, and depending on when they can get to that and how much time you give them to do it, that's real money for both sides.
It is.
I mean, it's so big, and so I think a lot of times people are paying what they're paying because they're needing it when they're asking for it.
Right.
I mean, and really, if going back to what we were talking about earlier, we've got good information. We know the life cycle. Our vendor is keeping us up to date. Just talking about good things that vendors can do of our assets. We know where we are recommendations wise. Hey, so Glenn can start talking to his folks about budgeting. Then you can give the contractor time of when to replace it. Now we're going to save money there. So it's good records, communication. I think we're saving money, right, Glenn?
I couldn't agree more. It's just, allowing, good, fast, cheap. Something I learned in construction years and years ago. And I try to keep that in mind. If I need it really, really fast, it's probably going to cost a little bit more. But if I have the opportunity to say, hey, I just need to get this done before heating season, before we have to start turning on the heat, that gives them some time to live with their, lead times and all that kind of thing, and work it in. It's like, I've had both calls. Hey, can we put you off a week? Well, hey, we've got some downtime. Could we come in this week? So, yeah, we'll make it happen. If we can make it happen, make it happen for them. So.
Talk to me a little bit about we've talked about some of these depending on the facility, say the landscaping in a situation like that, you've got a school, you've got a church. Tell me about the do's and don'ts and what you've seen from that world.
Fortunately, I've had the same contractor since in my whole time in this role. A gentleman, a smaller company that has just proven themselves to, no matter what happens, they're going to get it done for us. Having that as something that happens so frequently. I mean, week in, week out, all through the year, knowing that it's just going to happen. I don't have to worry about it. It's just a great thing. And if we do have something that comes up, the storm Helene blew through here. A couple weeks later, they were here just taking care of some of the mess left over. We had some cleanup to do, but they, just as a matter of course, came and did what they needed to do when they saw it was convenient for us. That reliability, it's somewhat boring, but boring is good, I think.
Steady.
We kind of joke within our department here. Yeah, we like to try to keep things as boring as possible because the excitement's going to come. We just don't know where and what it will be. So
That's funny that you say that. I mean, if we're doing business development and we're talking to somebody, it's like, yeah, you don't have a problem with them because things are going well. So that's a good sign. You don't have any, you don't have much experience. That's probably a good thing.
Yep. For
but
sure.
But when we start having on the flip side, I've also said, hey, you see we'll go to HVAC. You see an HVAC van there every other day. They're interacting with these folks a lot.
Yeah.
So they've either got a project or a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's opportunity for the communication to break down when we have situations. I mean, when we're communicating, that's when we're going to find the problem, right, Stormy?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying that, it sounds like you have a pretty even keel operation going. And I was going to ask you, we were talking before we got on air sort of about what the challenges are now for people in the church environment. And do you have any major challenges? Have things changed dramatically? Have you seen budget emphasis change and things? What's happening?
My experience, we have a group of local church facilities managers here in town. I've got an email group of 25 or 30 folks. So I'll try to speak to what I've, my experience and some of what I've learned from them. Budgets are always a concern.
Yes.
There's as in any situation, there are always budget priorities that come down from the leadership, from the C-suite, as it were, that can seriously impact everyone else's. This year for me, it's a project that we need to do in not this coming summer, but the summer after. That's going to require a lot of financial resources. So now everyone's kind of feeling the pinch coming from the facility side. We need to keep our budgets in line. We need to really ask ourselves, is this something that we need to do now, or can we put it off? All those questions are, hard at line. And budgets are always a concern to all the guys and ladies that I talk to locally. Staff retention is a problem. In a lot of ways, in listening to Stormy and others that are in F&T and kind of gleaning from the history of some of the professional facilities, organizations, and certifications, all that, I see churches as lagging behind on some of that. On those kind of things. On the technology side, we're usually not the first ones right out there on the leading edge of AI or all those kind of things. We let the people with money to spend learn those lessons and then try to listen. Staff retention is high. building, building those relationships with the decision makers so that they can trust your opinion and understand that you're not just making stuff up to make your job cushy or anything along those lines are some of the problems.
Do you have trouble with attracting staff too?
Currently, I'm in a good situation. I've built a really, really good team, and I don't say it lightly. I'm grateful every day for them.
Wonderful.
If I need to go, PTO time comes up, we talk about the things that might be happening, trying to keep them informed of the bigger things. But I know when I walk away, they're going to get it done. And if, they're not going to call me with the little piddly questions. They're going to, okay, I need to make a decision here, and I'm going to run with it because they know that, even if I don't think it's the best decision, we're not going to have, they're not going to be in trouble. We might talk about, the other options that may have been available and those kind of things, but, treating them fairly and kindly has really, really helped. In the past, one of the problems we're all facing, myself included, is we're getting to a point where retirement's right around the corner, or maybe it's there already. To make sure you have the people in place that can carry on, and look at what's going on and make some good decisions to change things going forward. Sort of that's part of the things I'm seeing. A lot of the guys and ladies in our group are getting older, and then finding those people who are willing to step in and carry on is a big thing right now too. Daniel, we can't hear you again.
I'm having trouble with my microphone. Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we'll have to look at that. But you make an interesting point about relationships with outside vendors, with your own team. It's really the same types of things, the communication between everybody, and we find out who we've got when we have situations that but it's a reciprocal thing too, Glenn, right? I mean, you've got great people, but I'm sure they would say, hey, we work for Glenn. What makes you a great manager of people?
I don't know that I'm a great manager.
Sounds like
I try to hire people I like being around. I don't want to be around someone who's always complaining and griping, and we got to deal with enough of that anyhow, just in the normal course of events. So people I like being around, who are willing to have fun and enjoy our work, and have those inside jokes, and those kind of when you get in a situation, those looks you can give each other, and everyone knows that, oh yeah, I yeah, yep, I get it, I know what's going on here. Having that, and then just being available. I always tell my crew, when if you've got a problem, I'm here. Come to me, give me a phone call. If I can't talk right then, we'll set up a time where I can talk, or give me 10 minutes, I'll be right with you. But just making sure that when they have a challenge and they need my advice, or or whatever, I'm there for them. And then at the times, when they have difficulties themselves, one of my guys just lost his mother-in-law. It's like, just go do what, go be with your family. We'll take care of it. Don't worry about anything. And then we left him alone, other than to, reach out with an encouraging word. And that says a lot to people. We don't want to be worrying about the toilet that won't flush when we're supposed to be having, time with our family, whatever the situation is. That's not a big enough problem. That's a big part of it. Just and treating them with just straight up respect. If they've earned it in any way, I'm not going to holler and scream at you. I joke with them that you're in trouble when I say to you, let's go to lunch, and it's on me. And, thankfully, I've only had to do that a few times, but, and even at that, it's a time we're going to sit down and talk. I may have to tell you something you don't want to hear,
Right.
but I'm going to be reasonable with it. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to do it as kindly as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I haven't had to buy any lunches lately, unless it's the whole group and it's just a fun lunch out or something.
Good.
So.
Stormy, is it possible for any facility manager, regardless of their facility, to create that type of vibe? That sounds like a good thing they've got going.
I believe it is. I think it's harder to do in a larger organization, but it takes work. That's all.
It does.
And that is what makes a good leader. That's what makes a good manager. It's my pin thought for the day.
Yep.
Today I am wearing a chair. And the reason I'm wearing a chair is because you need to create the environment where people know they can come in and sit down and talk to you about whatever it is. Whether you've got 5 people or 500 people, you need to be able to do that on a regular basis. And that's what creates that team sense, that feeling that you really need to be welcoming as a leader and a manager, so they know they can come in and talk to you about whatever they need to talk to. And it doesn't mean they're going to jump over their supervisors. They need to be able to talk to those too. But as the ultimate leader, you need to have that kind of an open door policy that people feel comfortable. And you need to get to know your people. Jack Welch, who was known at GE, he had a huge organization. He knew everybody, including all of the people who were cleaning in his buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And he just would walk around and get to know his people. And people loved him and admired him. And that's what you need to do. That's how you create that sense of team and that sense of belonging.
I think too, Stormy, that includes the people that we serve,
Sure.
And that's been something that personally I've been working on here lately. Is it's so easy to get tied to your desk or tied to the crew and the things that they're doing. I've made it a point here to, particularly last 6 months, is to get out and walk through the buildings and just kind of be present and speak to some people and ask if I know something that's going on in their lives, ask them about that. And it's not necessarily facilities directly related. Sometimes it is, like they'll say, hey, did you know this was happening, and we can stop and talk about that. But just having your presence known there, so know that people know that they're going to see you, and that you're open to have a conversation with them, whatever that may be. And that management by walking around, I think is sometimes you hear it put that way too. And it's relationships by walking around too.
Yes. I always tell people in big facility organizations, I encourage that management by walking around. And I encourage them, if they have someone in their office who can give them the management by walking around briefing for the morning. First thing you come in and that person sits down and says, you're going to walk this section of your building today. Here are the people you're going to meet. Here's what's been happening. So-and-so's daughter got married. So-and-so had a death in the family. So-and-so's getting a promotion. So-and-so is doing this. You need to be invested in those people. And it gives you such great recognition, but such pleasure that these people feel that you really know them as individuals, not just customers in your buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
good
gold
point
right there.
Yeah, I was going to say that I hate to end after that, because that's some really good stuff. It's super important. We started out talking about Stormy introducing herself to this large facility, her first facility many years ago, letting those folks know who she was, what her goals were, and then we talked about communication with vendors, communication with our internal team, communication walking the facility, relationships. these are the ways that we improve, and I think the better the communication, the more money that we save, and the happier folks that we have, right? In the end, I mean, we can ring a lot of different bells by managing facilities the right way. And we're going to continue to talk about that. We're going to continue to invite folks. Glenn, I'm so glad that I connected with you yesterday. This has
I
been
am
great.
too.
Yeah.
I could have sat here and just listened to Stormy all day.
I
I would have loved that. It's really
Nice
great
to see you again. I
really-
really enjoyed it. Really.
Yeah, well,
I
when
did
you
too.
said that you knew Stormy and had been, I said, well, there you go. We're going to have a great
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, little did I know it was going to turn out this. I mean, I wish we were in person. I would ask for an autograph on something.
That's
I
awesome.
really do appreciate her leadership and her knowledge and expertise that I've gained from over the years. It's
Gosh,
been a big help to me.
people like you that make it all worthwhile, Glenn.
Oh, well, thank you.
This has been great for me. I love the pen today, the chair. I've got a lot to think about. We will see everybody next week.
All right.
See ya.
Thank you all. Have a good
Bye-bye.
afternoon. Bye.
See ya. Bye.